Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Heilman and Haver in the Mix. It is I, Elwood Blues, with my friend Detective Mercer here to celebrate the Blues Brothers, 41 years old this year, June 20th. We're back at the Bay Street Bistro, and tonight we're going to celebrate with the Orange Whip.
The Orange Whip. Orange Whip?
Orange Whip. Orange Whips. So tell, what's in an Orange Whip? It sounds delicious.
It's a lot of orange. It's basically a creamsicle in a cup or in a glass. So the base alcohols are vodka and rum. You use triple sec. We're using Cointreau, which is a little more expensive. You can use a less expensive triple sec if you want. And then we've got orange juice and cream, which makes it the kind of, like I said, a creamsicle. So interesting. It's probably not what, this is kind of morphed over the years. It's probably not what John Candy was referring to in the movie. The Orange Whip used to be a fountain drink, carbonated, orange-flavored fountain drink, probably like a Fanta or something like that, these days. But rumor has it that Kenny Dugan, who was the owner of the Orange Whip, the company that owned Orange Whip at the time, was providing refreshments to the crew, cast and crew, and he asked director, it was John Landis, right? If they could just mention the brand during the film. Another rumor is that the costumer on the film was Dugan's daughter, I believe it was, and that she had the same request. So either way, at the end of the day, it was improvised by John Candy. So whether or not that message got to him, or if he just made it up. I mean, I'm knowing Candy and knowing these guys, the SCTV guys, it probably was just ad-lib from. Probably was,
and I think John Candy was the type of a guy who would have enjoyed an Orange Whip or two.
Yeah, and he may have been referring to the fountain drink. But what it's morphed into over the years is kind of this creamsicle. So,
was it a direct result of the movie that the cocktail came about?
Yeah, really. It's been
Cool.
Something that's just kind of lived on and referenced. Anytime you look at Orange Whip on the internet or any other reference material, so you want to call the internet a reference material, it's always associated with the film. So it's really as a result of keeping its popularity from the film. So.
Let's taste one.
Yeah, why keep talking about it? So let's taste one. So we've got our fresh squeezed orange juice.
What kind of oranges?
Valencia oranges.
Valencia, all right.
Because they don't leave a mark.
Right, of course.
All right, so we're doing 4 ounces of orange juice. And once again, because we're making 2, we're doubling it up here.
Fresh squeezed orange juice already reminds me of like an Orange Julius. People are familiar with that. Boy, those are delicious.
And then we're going to do the 1 ounce of rum. So for us,
rum and vodka.
yes. Then we got 2 ounces of vodka.
Certainly would be a welcome drink in the cold barrens of Illinois.
Oh, for sure.
Movie set in Chicago, obviously. Probably a lot of vodka consumed in Chicago. Same longitude as Russian counterparts.
And then we've got our heavy cream.
So is heavy cream, see, we did the Big Lebowski last week at the Roxy Theater, and we made some Caucasians, White Russians, and people were arguing about whether heavy cream is the same as half and half.
It is not.
Right,
Half
see?
and half is, and I'm spilling here, so. that's why
And in the
I'm
opening
not
scene, the big, Lebowski, the dude, goes in and buys half and half, not heavy cream, for 69 cents at Ralph's.
The interesting thing, and then you look when he's at Julianne Moore's character's house, he uses powdered coffee cream, So,
and
I think knowing Lebowski, he's using whatever he can get his hands on. So,
I put the Big Lebowski and the Blues Brothers almost in the same genre. They're just fun, a little cheesy. They've got a cult following,
Yeah,
a lot of sunglass wearing, a lot of,
and they
fair amount
build up
of
over
cocktails.
time.
They really do, yeah.
All right, there's one. All right.
Looks good.
Orange Whip, sir.
All right, here we go. To John Candy and the Blues Brothers. Oh yeah. That is an alcoholic creamsicle, my
It is.
friend. And potentially a hangover. But let's get to trivia first.
Okay.
All right. Well, we hope you've all had a chance to run to the kitchen and mix yourself up an orange whip for yourself. They're delicious. Perfect summertime drink, and pretty easy to make. We should have most everything at home. Maybe the Cointreau might throw a few people. But
like I said, triple sec. You just and you get triple sec anywhere, and it's reasonably priced.
Yeah.
Just for regular triple sec. Cointreau's a little more on the expensive side, but yeah, vodka and rum, just nothing special. You know, no aged rum or anything. Just simple.
I think the fresh squeezed orange juice. I think with a lot of cocktails, it needs to be fresh squeezed. I made some.
Difference.
Yeah, big time. I made some orange blossoms a few months ago, and I almost didn't even want to make the cocktail out of it. The juice was so good, and it's what really makes it taste like a creamsicle. Well, why are we making these drinks? The Orange Whip, obviously, might be the only drink that was mentioned by name in the Blues Brothers. They don't do a whole lot of drinking in that movie, but towards the end, the big culmination scene at the club where everybody's surrounding them, and there's John Candy as a Detective Mercer.
Yeah, with the state police around.
Yeah, just kind of enjoying himself, you know, not taking things too seriously, with his loud tie and all, and orange whips all around.
Yep, orange whips.
And apparently it was, like we said earlier, connected to someone on the cast, someone who's providing refreshments, the originator of the Orange Whip. I'm wondering if they were almost like a malt drink, it almost reminds me of something that maybe a malt shop.
Yeah, soda fountains.
That's what I'm looking for,
back in the 50s and that the era of the soda fountain.
Yeah. And, of course, the movie we're talking about is The Blues Brothers. It came out in 1980 on June 20th, so it's 41 years old already. Believe it or not, when I was about 6 years old, I would dress up like Elwood. Had the fedora and everything. We listened to the old 77s my parents had, and that would have been in like 88, so it was only out for 8 years.
And my dad used to dress like John Candy.
That's right, without knowing it.
In the 70s with the browns and the wacky beiges,
Yeah, John Candy pulls it off. You're pulling it off tonight, I think. And I'm just going to keep dressing like this every day. I feel great, and it's you know, it all coordinates really easily. So for those of you who haven't seen it, some of our friends here at the Bay Street Bistro, some of the young ladies, we had to tell them what the Blues Brothers was.
Yeah, it makes you worry about the younger generation.
Yeah, not only for its movie qualities as a film, but also the music. Obviously, we know that this is a derivative of the SNL skit, the band that they originated, Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, and got a little bit of credibility traveling and doing some shows with Steve Martin, and all of a sudden, people with money in their pockets want to make a movie out of it. And Dan Aykroyd wrote the screenplay, and away they went. But the cast doesn't end with Belushi and Aykroyd and Candy. This is obviously a heavy SNL cast. But we're talking about heavyweights in the music business like Cab Calloway, Ray Charles, James Brown, Chaka Khan, Johnny Lee Hooker, Aretha Franklin, Twiggy, not music, but another big name. Joe Walsh was in it, and Steven Spielberg, strangely enough. So some big names, and it must have been a lot of fun to make.
Yeah, and you think about the role Aretha Franklin had. It was pretty significant in the film. So it's not they weren't just ancillary folks. Now, is this so there's been this formula over the years, and this is the first film that I remember that came from SNL. You've had a bunch since then.
It was. Okay. It was. Yeah. Yep. Officially the first.
Okay.
And yeah, many since then. And we were talking about that as we were prepping. Is so many multi-talented people. John Belushi, when they started this process, Dan Aykroyd was the big blues fan. And Belushi, being a Chicago native, didn't really care, was kind of just agnostic about the blues. And Aykroyd was the evangelist and turned him on to all these fantastic artists. And Belushi, I mean, dancing, singing, acting, all these different things, and you'd never look at the guy and go, that's a blues man right there.
No,
you know,
for sure.
Watching things like Animal House, maybe The Build, maybe The Build, but you know, a guy like Chris Farley who could just hurl themselves around stage, and Aykroyd is the straight man, obviously, and then the musician, the harmonica player, that was all him. So, unfortunately, the movie didn't really do well at the box office. It was a little too campy for some, despite the music. Didn't get a lot of awards. It was nominated and won the Golden Reel Award for Best Sound Editing, for sound effects, not for the music, for the sound effects. A lot of crashing cars and smashing windows and things.
It's interesting sometimes you get movies that develop a cult following.
Yes.
Never, I won't say it, rarely do well at the box office when they're released.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. Perfect example, like we talked about, The Big Lebowski that we screened at the Roxy last weekend. Thanks to everybody who came out. Had a great time. We were also in costume. Didn't get a big following at first, and now cult classic. Certainly among the college crowd.
Yeah.
So. And again, we said that this is an SNL, born on SNL. Lorne Michaels was very hesitant to do an all-music bit, and they convinced him to give it a try. Again, like we said, they went on and did some shows opening for Steve Martin. He was starting to get some pull as a solo entertainer there in the California area and LA area, and the rest is history. And we got on June 20th, which is coming up, is Father's Day this year. They're going to be celebrating here at the Bistro with their Sunday supper, and there may or may not be ribeye involved in true Chicago fashion. So
there are rumors about.
There are rumors about,
yeah.
Indeed, and many rumors about the Blues Brothers movie, the making of the movie. I try to find reputable sources when it comes to the trivia that we share, and this is one I had to share. I really hope it's true, but the film won 4th place for Best Foreign Film from the Turkish Film Critics Association, and not until 1984. It might have taken that long for them to get the film in the Middle East.
True.
But
remember, we were talking to Amy Camp about the Lausanne Film Festival. Right. A movie doesn't have to be released that particular year.
That's true.
To be included in the film festival.
That's very.
So it can happen anytime.
That's very true.
So stranger things have happened.
And there are 2 official Blues Brothers albums. Their first one was Briefcase Full of Blues, and the second one was actually made after the film. You can find them both pretty easily, and it's excellent music. Not all of the songs on the movie made the soundtrack. So and there's actually an extended version of the film that may or may not have been lost to history. So maybe we'll have to talk to Tracy Gossel about that one, see if she can dig it up.
She'll jump right all over that.
Yeah, exactly.
After she's finished with her Douglas Fairbanks.
Dan Aykroyd was, and I didn't know this until we started prepping for this, but he was one of the writers. And the first version that he presented was 324 pages. He actually wrapped it in the San Fernando Yellow Pages as a joke when he presented it to John Landis, the director and the co-writer. And strangely enough, he wrote the film, or wrote the first treatment, but he only received $250,000 for his role, and Belushi received $1 million. I'm thinking it had to do with Animal House, because this was post Animal House, and Aykroyd hadn't done anything yet. So, quite a bit of money for a couple of young guys in that time period. So, the opening scene, you remember, Elwood shows up in his old beat-up police car, his cruiser, to pick up Joliet Jake, his brother, from prison, and there were actual shots fired during the filming of this scene when they brought a helicopter over to get, the wide shots. The guards thought that somebody was coming in to try to orchestrate a prison break, and so they actually fired at the helicopter. Wow. And the boy, if you watch, we talk a lot about silent films with Tracy Gossel and Frank Ferrante and a lot of these film historians, Jeremy Arnold. They don't talk for the first 8 minutes. That's like 2 silent films right there worth of no dialogue. You hear She Caught the Katie in the background, and a few of the prison guards say a few things, but Jake doesn't say anything to Elwood until like 8:02. And then it's, what's this? My own brother. Picking him up from prison in a cop car. Carrie Fisher, another big name. Not an SNL alum, but a Star Wars alum. Made the movie, one of the Star Wars movies in '80 also. And I guess that would have been number 2, right? If I'm my 77 and 80, and we'll have to do our homework for that one.
I should know that.
Especially for the Roxy showing of Star Wars for their movies of the decade is coming up, I think in August. So Carrie Fisher actually engaged for a time to Dan Aykroyd. He saved her from choking on a Brussels sprout while the movie was being made. Decided, what if this ever happened again? I better marry the guy. Didn't last a long time. You can't, I guess you can't base a relationship on the Heimlich maneuver. She went back to her first love, Paul Simon. Was married to him for a couple of years. But she tries to kill the brothers all throughout the film. It's just this really kind of a psychotic character for her.
I remember in the It was like drain or
The sewer system.
sewer
Yeah,
system,
she got the M16.
Yeah, it's just classic. I mean, there's so many quotes. I mean, we've talked about that with you mentioned Big Lebowski and some of the other films that we like to feature. So quotable.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I remember
the fun.
the cop car, the cop radio, cop brakes, everything.
Cap
everything.
shocks.
Yeah, and I still anytime I see, because you have people that buy the old police cars and they're driving them around. And every time I see something like that, I think of the Blues Brothers.
I actually had a bit of trivia about the car. Oh, yes. You don't have to go to a police auction if you want to get your own version of the Bluesmobile. And I'm tempted to do this. And I checked this out, too. Race City Retro. If you Google Race City Retro, they sell a kit complete with 2 license plates, Illinois, and it's BDR 529 for the purists out there, and decals that replicate the look of the original. It was from Mount Prospect, Illinois, the police car that Elwood bought. Back to Carrie Fisher really quick. Again, we talked about her Star Wars cred, and she kissed 2 men in 1980. Probably more than that, but 2 men we know of. Harrison Ford as Han Solo, and John Belushi as Joliet Jake. And guess who kissed better? Not who you'd expect. Had to go with Jake.
Yep.
Joliet Jake. It's the musician, I think.
Probably.
Yeah, a musician, pilot.
Or he was, a little looser maybe.
Yeah, a little bit. Something tells me he probably was. A little more than Harrison Ford. Copious amounts of drugs were used. Certain white powders tended to build up in the vicinity of Jake, and they actually had to build it into the budget. John Belushi had quite a habit at the time, and I think everybody sampled a bit for those night shoots. They went significantly over budget. But it's kind of part of the lore, I think, of the film.
And you hear the stories about Saturday Night Live, and even up through Chris Farley and those guys
who idolized John Belushi.
Yeah, to get through a lot of their, I mean, they were as they get closer to the show, it's a week-long process, and they're up 24 hours writing and practicing, and it's something that's just it's an epidemic with the group like that. And I think some of them can handle it better than others. Some of the stress, and Belushi had trouble with that. I mean, his brother talks about that. Dan Aykroyd talks about that. The way he just could not handle the the stress and the time and things like that.
Well, and the pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
You constantly have to be on. You've got to be John Belushi all the time. Yeah, it'd be overwhelming.
Which is one of the reasons, as a side note, why Jim Belushi has the marijuana business, and he claims, and there's probably a lot of validity to this. If John Belushi would have done pot instead of what he did, he'd still be alive.
Yeah, and he knew it. He could kind of see that if he didn't slow down, it wouldn't end well, and it didn't, unfortunately. But in 1980, the boys were going strong, and John Belushi wasn't the only one getting destroyed on set. Obviously, the cars. You don't have the Blues Brothers without the blues, without the boys, and without the cars, and then without the orange whip. And it held a record for a while, 104 cars destroyed. It beat the 1974 version of Gone in 60 Seconds by 11. And then the mark stood until 1982's The Junk Man, which totaled 150. And as of 2020, it sits in 8th place, with Transformers 3 being responsible for 532 automobiles being destroyed.
But I don't think any other film did it with as much style. And I mean, shopping mall. I mean, just driving through the shopping mall and
the Dixie Square Mall. Yeah, and it was the Dixie Square Mall was already empty. It had there'd been a lot of crime in that area of Chicago, so they'd already shut it down. They filled the stores with stuff to make it look like it was in operation and just off hours. And when the shooting was completed, the place was trashed. They left it trashed because there wasn't anything in the contract that said we have to clean up. And it was like they were sued for more than $87,000 in damages. Universal was. And the building remained unused and just completely blighted until it was demolished in 2012. So up until 2012, you could go and walk through the original set, the Dixie Square Mall, and it's epic, and it's almost absurd how long the car chases go, how many of them pile up, how many storefronts are smashed, but it just keeps the laughs rolling.
There is something about humor, and you see this with some of these shows that a joke goes on and on and on, and there's a fine line there that it goes too far, but you think a car chase that's that long is going to get to the point where it's just too long, but it's not. You know, it doesn't go far enough that makes it unfunny and old. Mm-hmm. But it just.
And these guys knew where that sweet spot was. Yeah, exactly right. The other thing that you wouldn't have the Blues Brothers without the sunglasses. The Ray-Bans were definitely focal points, and John Belushi went through hundreds of them. They started calling him the Black Hole because he lost so many pairs. And it was funny because you only see Jake and Elwood's eyes once, and the Universal executives argued that you need to humanize these guys. You need to see their eyes, take the shades off. Well, the only time he does is in that sewer scene where he's begging Carrie Fisher to spare their lives, and then immediately drops her in the mud and runs off to chase the band. You're on a mission from God. You can't stop for dames, right? Even if they have machine guns. So, yeah, it's just a fantastic film. For those of you who haven't seen it, the music is phenomenal. You're going to recognize a lot of folks. It's a great way to, I'd probably say, turn your teenagers on to some of this great music, PG-13. But a fun movie, definitely a classic. You're going to see a lot of faces that unfortunately aren't around anymore. We think of John Belushi, we think of John Candy, and of course Carrie Fisher, Aretha. So many of these folks, and Aykroyd's still going. Now you can still find the Blues Brothers. They're still playing shows occasionally. At least they were pre-COVID. John Goodman steps in sometimes. Jim Belushi, John's brother, steps in that role. And of course there is Blues Brothers 2000. Pass. Just go see the original. 1980, June 20th, 1980, and June 20th of this year, in a few days from when this posts to our YouTube channel, treat Dad to a ribeye down here at the Bay Street Bistro. It's going to be a special menu, as always on Sundays down here, and call early for reservations, and we'll have all that listed in the show notes, of course. And they'll have the orange whip going. So put on your best black and white and grab your cop car and swing down.
That's right.
Yeah. And happy Father's Day, sir.
Yeah, and to you.
All right. And here's to John Candy and the Blues Brothers.